Unnecessary intro song to totally waste your time. All right, I'm annoyed. I just recorded 10 minutes of bullshit, me yapping on, and guess what? It wasn't recording. And now I'm annoyed, and I don't want to even tell the story that I was telling to nobody before, but I'm going to anyway. Because today, I've been all wrapped up in politics, as probably have half of you. It's impossible to not be political these days if you're me. I know that some people aren't political. I see them. I see the YouTubers that just make stuff and pull people out of the mud. They're not into politics. They never mention a thing about it. They just carry on doing what they're doing. I wonder, are they aware? Do they know what's going on? How do they not mention it? How is Matt from Matt's Off-Road Recovery not piping off about immigration? Well, he lives in southern Utah. It's not a big thing for him, so maybe that's why. But lots of these people, and I'm glad, by the way, I'm glad that there are lots of channels that I can watch that have nothing to do with politics. Because despite the fact that I'm talking about politics all the time on this channel, I like to take breaks from politics. I actually don't even really like politics. It's not fun. I don't enjoy politics, but I'm compelled. It feels like a survival thing, my interest in politics. And I was thinking about how are some people not involved and some people don't care. I've got brothers and sisters who don't care. They wonder why I care. They tell me it's stupid that I care. They look down upon me, especially when they hear my crazy views. But I was wondering, when did I become political? When did that start? Because thinking back in my whole life, I've always felt a little political. And I know that sounds weird, but when there's a photograph that was hanging up in my dad's house the whole time I was growing up, of me when I was about 3 or 4 years old. It's hard to tell. I don't know, it's hard for me to tell the difference between a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, but I must have been about that age. And it's a picture that I think my dad took it of me with his Olympus OM1 or something. And it's sitting on the lawn beside this ice cream place called Snell Grove Ice Cream in Sugar House in Utah. And Snell Grove had this big, huge, rotating double scoop ice cream cone, that was about 20 feet high. It was a big rotating sign, side-by-side scoops, And in that photograph, I'm wearing a Snoopy for President shirt. And I'm wondering, did I pick that out? Was I interested in that whole concept of Snoopy being president? I don't remember donating to his campaign or going door to door. I didn't do any telephone banking for Snoopy that I can remember. But that same shirt appears in another picture from a different thing that wasn't a photograph not taken by my dad, or it might have been, but I don't think so. It's like this family portrait of me, my sister, my dad, and my first half-brother. And he's probably about, under a year old. He's still wearing diapers, holding him, gushy baby, curled up legs, looks like a larva, And it's a professional photograph, I think. My dad could have taken out a timer, but regardless, whoever printed it in a portrait kind of way where it's a reverse vignette, you know. It's fades out to white at the corners instead of dark vignette. So, and I'm wearing this shirt in that photo too. Could have been the same day, could have been the same weekend, I don't know. I don't particularly remember the shirt except for from that photograph. But the thing is I also remember being political very early in elementary school, you know, I remember piping off about, piping, is that the term? Spouting. That's interesting. A pipe and a spout. Stop piping off. Do they even say that, or did I just make that up? Anyway, I was spouting off about Nixon. How does that even figure in? In high school, I painted Nixon on the basement wall of my friend, Andrew. We called him President Mixon, but I don't know why. I don't know why I was political. I used to walk every day. By the time I moved back to West Jordan, we moved around all over the place. But when I was in elementary school, and this is kind of hard to pin down because I went to an elementary school, Majestic Elementary School, and it was right next to the junior high. And when I was in elementary school, it was the junior high next door. And then somewhere along the line, there was a big thing where they changed junior high to middle school, right before. Sixth grade used to be in elementary school, right? And then they decided to put the sixth grade into middle school instead of it in junior high, and then took ninth grade out of junior high and put it into high school. Big thing. But anyway, that happened when I went into sixth grade. So it's like we went into junior high early, but it was middle school. I can never figure out why they did that. I guess they figured that too many kids in ninth grade were hitting puberty or something. And so they thought, we need to get these pubescent kids away from the younger kids. And then they just had to, I don't know about they figured out how sixth grade needed to go on. I guess 2 grades wasn't enough. Aren't you glad I'm talking about this important shit? But anyway, so from the time I was in 4th grade until 8th grade, all the way through, I walked the same path to school every day. You know, basically the same path. We walked to school every day. So I remember a lot of thoughts from those walks to school. And a lot of them were strangely political. I can kind of narrow down things from the dates, but I remember one time walking on that path. I don't know who I was arguing with, but I was having an intense argument all the way to school about Gerald Ford versus Jimmy Carter. And I had very strong opinions against Jimmy Carter. I guess this would have had to have been what's 4 years before 1980? That would have been 75? 76. Yeah, 76. Late 76. Early 77, maybe? I don't know. But I had strong opinions. Or maybe it wasn't even about the election. Maybe it was just... It could have been... Anyway, who gives a shit? What the fuck? I just remember arguing about fucking Jimmy Carter and somebody else arguing passionately against Gerald Ford. I was defending Ford and attacking Jimmy Carter, and this other person was attacking Gerald Ford and acting like Jimmy Carter was some kind of hero. And I was like, he's a peanut farmer, blah, blah, blah. You know, I don't think there was anything deep there. But you could usually say, well, that's because your parents probably had ideas about that. But that's not true. My mom never voted, ever. she was Canadian, never got her citizenship all squared away, you know. I never heard her talking about politics or candidates. But there I was, arguing on the way to school, you know. Another thing I remember on that path, that same path to school, whatever year this is, you can look this up, but I remember one time walking to school by myself, and before you got to the school, you'd have to pass through this little, you know, hole in the fence, not a hole, but, you know, a little pathway where you reach the dead end from the neighborhood. It curves into a little pathway with bushes on either side, kind of like this, you know, almost like a tunnel, you know, and that would spill out onto the lawn of the elementary school. And from there, if you're in elementary school, you go to the elementary school. Otherwise, you'd cross the lawn and go to middle school or junior high. But I remember one time when I just entering into that little tunnel, I checked my watch, and I had one of those digital watches with the red numbers, you know, them, you're old, and you'd have to push the light and push the button to make it illuminate, you know. And I pushed that thing all the time, by the way. My batteries ran down so fast. Those things sucked up battery, and I'd like check my watch every 2 seconds because I like seeing that glow. But I remember checking my watch, pushing the button, and it said 8 o'clock. And I thought, Gary Gilmore is being executed right now. And I was just pondering a man being killed on purpose by the government. And just thinking, I don't know if I like this idea. You know, I was uncomfortable with it. I was like, just at no other point in my life up until then was I aware of any moment when somebody whose name I knew was dying, where I could just be disconnected from it. You know? I think that's a pretty political thought. And it kind of seems strange to me that even if on the high end it was 8th grade, walking that same, or on the low end, 4th grade, I can triangulate the date later. But no matter what date, it seems early for a kid to be thinking about that, you know? And another thing about that path going into that middle school is that I remember the day that Reagan was shot, you know? In my math class, it was in a building that was kind of adjacent to the school. Don't make me describe how seminary works. Well, I guess now I have to. Mormons in Utah figured out a deal where they could get kids to be able to, for one class during the day, have Mormon church ceremony, a seminary where they teach you church things. It couldn't be on the school property because that would be a mixture of church and state. So the church would buy a little piece of adjacent property that basically like in the parking lot. But remember when I told you the middle school thing ended? Well, along with that, the seminary ended and it ended up being used for math class. Aren't you glad I told you that story? This is really important information. Anyway, yeah, the announcement came on. Teachers and students, we have some important things to say. President Reagan has been shot. Whoa, gasp. Most of the kids didn't care, but I thought it was a really big deal. I was like, whoa. They wheeled in the TV. Remember when you were young, they wheel the TV on the cart, turn it on, and we watch news at school, live news. You know, and I was really interested in that, but I don't know why I became political. You know, maybe it was a combination of those things. Maybe somebody had an opinion at school. I had really dramatic incidents regarding teachers trying to teach me about slavery. One of them was in elementary school, and I couldn't have been more than, this would have been second grade, however old you are there. Miss DeYoung wanted to teach us about slavery. So we went into class, and she handed out, we were all sitting there, and she handed out assignments, but only to the boys. She just went around and handed out a math test to all the boys. And we were all going, okay, what the fuck's going on here? And she said, all the boys are going to take this test. All the girls are going to go to the back of the room, and we're going to have a popcorn party. And I was like, what? What nonsense is this? What are you talking about, lady? Can't do that. She went to the back of the room and plugged in one of those hot air corn poppers. You know, they were brand new at the time. I think it had the yellow top on it. It could be confused because we had one of those later, so I might be mixing things up. But the girls went to the back of the room, sat in a big circle, and you could smell the smell of popcorn. You could hear it popping. And I'm looking at all the dudes, and I'm going, what the fuck are you guys doing? Why are you doing this thing? You don't have, stop doing your homework. I was defiantly just not doing my homework, you know? Like, no, I'm not going to do this. This is bullshit. This is not fair. You know, no way am I doing this. And I was so mad at the other boys for doing it. I was like, stop doing it. Do you get it? Do you understand? We don't have to do this. She can't do this to us. This is discrimination. I doubt I knew that word, but I might have. Anyway, I got so pissed. I walked back to the back of the room. I hopped over some girls. I went right to the middle, sat my ass down, grabbed the popcorn bowl, and just started munching like a whole fistful of popcorn. Just, like looking at the girls, looking at my teacher like, what are you gonna do, bitch? Munch, munch, munch. You know, filled with adrenaline. Just, I don't even know how that ended, quite frankly. I've told this story at least a dozen times in my life. But there's no real ending to that. I don't know if I got in trouble. I don't know what the teacher did. I would have remembered if I blacked out, but let me just tell you, the adrenaline got the best of me in that moment because I don't know how it resolved. She probably was just like, oh shit, I didn't expect a slave to revolt. Not sure how to deal with this. Do I whip him? That's what it was. She strung me up and she whipped me. That's what it was. That's how I'm going to tell the story from now on. Stripped off my clothes. Made me say, my name is Kunta. Kunta Kinte. Anyway, so that was political. That's very early. That's some early politics, second grade, you know. Anyway, by the time I got to high school, for whatever reason, I became a libertarian. I don't remember exactly what it was. Maybe, I don't think I read an Ayn Rand book until I was much older, so it wasn't that. I don't even know how I discovered libertarianism, but somebody must have described it to me. It was probably Mr. Funk in social studies, and I might have just went, okay, this is cool. I like this libertarian shit. I love it. This is great. Freedom. You know? Laissez-faire. Don't tread on me. Just, you know? You do what you want to do, I'll do what I want to do. Pretty good. I voted for Ross Perot. You remember him? Nutty guy. I even drew pictures of him. I was political. This was like, that was, I guess, by the time the 90s came around, after I was out of high school. You know, but I kept going down this libertarian path. And the progression was I just kept voting for libertarian candidates. And it was just like, yeah, freedom. Freedom. Don't you want to be free? I think the reason why I chose is because it kind of is a trump card, no pun intended, but in any political debate, no matter who you're talking to, you can just kill them with all this idea of freedom stuff. Like you can't beat it What? How are you going to say you're not for freedom? Liberty. You don't like liberty? You know? But looking at it now, the fact that I hung on to it for so long is kind of embarrassing. Because I hung on to it until basically just a few years ago. Really, up until really recently, I would pull out that old, hey man, I'm libertarian. I went from being hardcore libertarian, an idealist, a useless libertarian, you know? Like even in 2016, I didn't vote for Trump. I voted for fucking Gary Johnson. What a waste. Like every other vote. Just flushing it down the toilet on the libertarian guy as if I'm doing something noble, you know? But I think really what it is, and the shameful part about it, is that libertarian is kind of gets you out of jail free. It's a weak position. It's a superior position. It's an idealist position. It doesn't require anything of you than to just be snobby and have all the answers and, you know, be an idealist. Because Lord knows it's never going to happen, right? Pure libertarianism, pure free markets worldwide, it's globalist. If you're a libertarian, you're a globalist. They don't like to admit that. And most of them would say they're not, but they are. If you're a real, actual, principled libertarian, you can't believe in borders. Right? No, borders, man. It all goes back to the anarcho-capitalists. And I would kind of describe myself as, actually, I'm kind of an anarchist, you know? The non-aggression principle, that's good. But what that does is those are all just fun things to say. They're just arguments. They're not connected to reality at all. There's no final, and I realized this pretty early on, like halfway through Trump's first administration, I started editing the way I would describe libertarianism. I thought I was really clever in saying that libertarianism is actually, it's a direction you kick the ball, okay? It's not, you'll never reach the ideal. It's just you're always kicking the ball in that direction. And so it just moves the Overton window and blah, blah, blah. I'm so smart. And still, though, even as an ideal, though, it's full of holes. It's full of holes. If you even think that there's an ideal of not having borders, you're going towards globalism. Because at no point in the history of the world has there ever been a society that didn't have a hierarchy, rulers, you know, a government. And so it doesn't work. And it's fair that a lot of conservatives call them Libertarians, which I think is stupid. They should just call them Liber-TARD-ians. I know that gets them confused. The thing is, libertarians will always say they have nothing to do with liberalism, but they do. They do. You can't get away from the open drugs, the free market for everything, that drugs should be legal, and everybody has their choice, and let the world have, you know, just whatever consequences come. We're going to have free markets. If some other country doesn't have a free market, well, they will ultimately be punished for that by their own hand because they don't get it. They don't understand that. But maybe they will. The libertarians always have this idea that if they keep preaching it, you know, this holier than thou, libertarian, I got it all worked out. If they keep doing it, somehow everybody else is going to grab onto it because it just makes so much sense. You know? But it's so ignorant, and it's stupidly ignorant. It's embarrassingly ignorant of how long I held on to it, you know? And the reason why is it's a smug, superior way to go into things, and it gets you off the hook. You don't have to do anything. You can always say, I'm not it. You get to be that fucking asshole that I was literally up until just months ago. You know, you could be one of these, hey man, it's two wings of the same bird. I hate both parties. I'm not a member of either party. Why are you criticizing me? I hate the Republicans. I hate all politics. The smug, fucking useless, non-committal, above it all. No pragmatism about it. And you know, I only figured that out because I made friends with this woman on the internet with whom I'd exchanged lots of voice memos and conversations about this and that. And she's diehard, libertarian, free marketeer, total anti-communist, you know. But when I heard my views coming out of her mouth, and we'd have these discussions and I'd play devil's advocate, when I heard libertarian ideas coming out of her, and she was really insistent and kind of like I had been, you know, I was one of those guys just committed. But I feel badly because we're not friends anymore, but it's like cutting her off as a friend is like ending a friendship with myself, my old self, you know? Because just hearing those arguments, that superior, just write off anybody. Oh, Trump's just the same. Oh, this person's just the same. Oh, this person. And then pivot into your smart fucking free market nonsense, your argument, you know, I got the thing. It's everybody bad is communist. Nobody's good. And only the principle of libertarianism is good. And the only man that's doing it is Ron Paul, who, by the way, I loved up until recently. And now I look at Rand Paul and I look at Thomas Massey, guys that I thought were fucking amazing heroes just a few years ago. Now I look at them and I go, fuck you guys. And it's really me saying, fuck you, Merkley, to them. They're like, me breaking up with me again. I hear them talking and I'm just going, oh, you fucking arrogant guys. Trump is so right about them and he was so right about me. Libertarianism is showboating. It's grandstanding. It's all about me. Oh, look at me. I'm oppositional to everyone. Isn't it crazy? I kind of marvel at how much I switched in the last year, you know? And I wonder why it took me so long. I guess it was just meeting that woman who said the things I'd been saying for years, and I just heard them and went, oh my God, these things are so stupid. These are the worst, stupid, self-centered, arrogant arguments. You don't have to do anything if you're libertarian. You know? You don't have to take a stand against immigration. You don't have to take any hard stances on anything. When the Republicans fail, you go, see, I told you, government sucks. When the Democrats fail, see, I told you, government sucks. And then you just go back and listen to Ron Paul complain about everything that the government does. You'll get excited every once in a while. Trump did this one thing that I like, you know. But then he's back to being the same old snobby, know-it-all, grandstanding guy with a website that's selling gold or supplements or some other fucking scheme. I don't know. I don't mean to be mad at libertarians because that's the allure of it. The allure of it is that it does sound good. It does sound good. you get to just, it's a virtue signal as an identity. Your whole identity is this glowing liberty. I'm an angel. I'm literally the Statue of Liberty. I'm an eagle. I'm the wings. I'm the, you know. I represent freedom. Fuck you. You do not. Open borders aren't freedom. Okay? Free drugs on the street at low, low, low prices because the market brings the cost of fentanyl down to nothing. That's not a virtue. You know? Even when you get rid of the controls like compulsory schooling, which I want to get rid of for sure, you know, it's still like, that doesn't solve the problem. In the real world, human beings need to fight. They need to do dirty work. There are actual enemies that you can't just make disappear with freedom. Freedom. Freedom will do it. The problem is there's just not enough freedom. Once there's more freedom, all the bad guys will stop being bad guys. The only reason why the bad guys are being bad guys is because Republicans and Democrats and Americans and CIA made them be bad guys. But if they didn't interfere, everybody would be free and happy. No. Nope. Nope. There are bad guys in the world. There is good and there is evil. And there always will be, and it will always be a tug of war. You can opt out of it and pretend to be superior to it, you know, and just go, oh, you didn't get it. You're not smart enough. You don't understand freedom enough. That's why you failed. It's because your market, your market's not free enough. That's why. But we can't go to war. You know, can't fight because that's forcing. It's just stupid. When you really break it down, it's so fucking dumb. And I just can't believe how long I pushed it. It's just embarrassing. Anyway, I know this channel's filled with a lot of me talking about how embarrassed I am for having been me for so long. But be that as it may, I mean, I don't think there's a way forward in life unless you do figure out where and why and how you were dumb in the past. And any person, I think, in my opinion, if you're not looking back at your former self and going, holy shit, what a dumb fuck, you're probably still a dumb fuck. And I'm not even, and if you're smart, this is going to sound weird, if you're smart, you should know that you're still a dumb fuck. Right now, the dumb fuck now, in 10 years, if I live that long, I'll be looking back and I'll go, how could that guy have been so dumb? I don't know. I think if you're halfway smart or honest, you don't even need to be smart. If you're honest, then literally the older you get and the wiser you get, the more you realize you're dumb. You know? I was, in fact, watching this video, a stupid Veritasium video. I don't like that guy. I don't know why. I don't have any reason to not like him, but I always feel like he's playing a smart ass. But, you know, they were talking about the Dunning-Kruger thing, and I've made recordings about Dunning-Kruger here, you know, and Dunning-Kruger, these two guys, it just basically did a study where essentially the bottom line is the more confident somebody is, the less competent they are, and the more competent somebody is, the less confident they are. It's an inverse thing, you know. And it's true, you know. If you don't know much, you have a lot of confidence. I've said it before on this channel, but years ago I wrote, I was blessed with a gooful dose of delufidence, you know. Blessed, cursed, blessed with a gooful, good, awful dose of delusion and confidence. And I really feel that way about my life, you know. There's the yin and the yang there constantly. I'm willing to admit my mistakes. I'm willing to move forward, but it's not always easy, which is probably the most obvious thing I've said today. But anyway, the funny thing about the Dunning-Kruger thing is that I don't know if Dunning-Kruger meant it as a joke, their study as a joke, but to me it looks like a joke. It looks like a practical joke on everybody, because anybody that would bring up Dunning-Kruger, and almost every time you hear the word Dunning-Kruger, it's somebody else trying to insult you for being confident. You know, it's a way to call you dumb. You know, you don't know that you're dumb, but I know that you're dumb. Do you see the problem there? If you're citing Dunning-Kruger and you're using the word Dunning-Kruger to insult somebody, it's almost for sure that you are the person cited in Dunning-Kruger. You think because you heard about that study, you're smarter than the guy you're arguing with. And the fact that you tell him about it, that's really pretty hard evidence that you are suffering from the confidence and lacking competence. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, it's not that big of a deal, you know. It really isn't. It's not that big of a deal. It's actually nice when you realize that of all the things there is to know in the world, you know very few of them. There's a whole universe of things you could possibly know. And good news, dear human, you only know a tiny, tiny bit, you know? And you don't have to know the rest. You don't have to be better than everybody else. But you can get in there, look at what's actually, you know, objectively good and objectively evil, and pick a goddamn side. You know, stand up, do something about it, because Lord knows if you don't do it, the other guy's going to do it. If you leave an empty seat, if you're not going to be the one to do the good thing, you know, a bad guy's going to fill that hole. And there are bad guys. And they're not just going to stop if you just start saying, freedom. Just remember freedom. If I say freedom 1,000 times, you're going to be magically transformed into a beautiful creature who doesn't want to slice off the dicks of children and talk to them about your perverted fantasies. Freedom. And by the way, it should be okay to talk about that, because libertarianism means that you can talk about whatever you want. And if an adult wants to talk to a child about sex, it's okay, because freedom. And they can do fentanyl too, because that's freedom. And then they will learn that they don't want to do that anymore, or they'll just die. Anyway, that's what libertarianism sounds like to me now. Pussies, wussies, not taking a stand, sitting back, doing nothing, blaming everybody else. Everybody else. Not just half the people, everybody. You're all dumb. You all suck. It's hard to fight that. It is so hard to fight that. Because even as I said that, I was thinking, I probably still sound like that now. You know? It's hard, man. It's hard to actually take a stand and do something and decide this is good, that is bad, and I'll fight you. Okay? Anyway, I don't want to fight anybody, but it's good to have a little bit of clarity, I think. It feels good to be honest. It feels good to acknowledge reality instead of imbibing in fantasy, and pretending that fantasy is somehow real or achievable. Pragmatic, being real. Reality is great. The limits that reality sets, there are no limits in the imagination, but reality, the physical world, the world that God created, has rules. The laws of nature, God's laws. And when I say God's laws, I'm not talking about the 10 Commandments or anything in a book. I'm talking about water that plant, get it enough sunshine, or it dies. Protect your family from these people, or they will slice off your children's dicks. Take a stand, or Somalians will take over your country and steal all your tax dollars and laugh about it. You have to do something. Anyway, I think there is good news out there, though. I don't want to leave you on a dark note. The way I look at it is if I can change, I feel like lots of other people are probably changing too. That's what I found out in my life, is that when I'm thinking something, I'm not this one little guy who thinks something original is. I kind of assume that if I'm thinking something, there are hundreds, maybe thousands of other people thinking the same thing and going through the same changes, and that's good. I see some changes going on. I see people getting fed up, and that's good. I see people waking up, paying attention, and having the courage and the wherewithal to say enough. No more fuckery. Anyway, so that's good. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. Unnecessary outro song to